If you're someone who constantly feels unsure, like you're never really clear on what you want or what to do next, maybe you feel quite overwhelmed, reactive, kind of like you're getting swept up in life rather than leading it, this video is going to help you with that. We're talking about self-trust, and self-trust is really important because it's going to help you lead the way with your life. Now, the mistake a lot of people make is that they look outside of themselves for answers. So when it comes to making a decision, they're looking at what other people think. They're filtering their decisions through other people's opinions, through what other people have done, and outsourcing their opinions. Maybe they're polling their friends. They're going on ChatGPT. They're Googling, right? They're looking externally for solutions. They value other people's opinions more than their own, which sounds okay. It sounds normal almost. But the challenge here is that if you continue to do this, you can get to a place where you don't really know who you are or what you want. And this is a really hard place to be in. I was at this place once when I was going down the path of law school. I got good grades, I got into school, and it was kind of exciting at the start. And without even spending, a few months there, I was exhausted, right? I had mountains of paperwork, so much to do that was just draining me. And while it looked good on paper, while it was what I thought I wanted to do, I was doing it because it looked good, right? Because it was the acceptable thing, because my family would approve of that. And when I put myself in that position and even fast forwarded down the line, say 10 years, I knew that I would be a slave to my job, a slave to my desk. I would probably have really late nights. And being a lawyer was not the life that I was choosing, right? It was the life that I was choosing based on what I thought was the right thing to do, because I had filtered that through other people's views, right? And so I was at a bit of a crossroads here. I really needed to make a decision with what I was doing. Was I going to continue down this path that was potentially going to lead me to a place where I was unfulfilled? Or was I going to make a really hard choice and risk letting everyone down and following what felt right? And I chose the latter. I chose to drop out. I chose to do my own thing. And surprisingly, things fell into place, which was a really beautiful lesson because it built self-trust in myself, in knowing that, okay, I knew what I wanted and I chose and it worked out. So then I started to build this self-trust muscle of like, maybe things are going to be fine if I do choose. Okay, and this is why it's important, because if we're filtering through the lens of other people, it can be quite easy to make choices that we don't align with, choices that we don't agree with. We can give away our yeses really easily, which leads us to be drained and exhausted. It can lead us to have regrets and to resent others, especially when we look in the grand scheme of things. If you choose based on everyone else your whole life, you can get to the end of your life and look back with regret and thinking, why did I even do this? Why did I allow myself to be so persuaded by other people? Why did I value their opinions? I didn't get to do what I wanted to do. And you can look back with a really resentful lens of like frustrated at others, but also very frustrated at yourself of like, how could I have let this happen? Right? And it's because you didn't allow yourself to choose, right? Self-trust is built from choosing and making those choices. And we'll get into that a little bit. But I just want to highlight here, like, what is actually the challenge with allowing this? It seems like the right thing, but we can get really lost and we can feel really disconnected from ourselves. Now, the reason that this doesn't work is because when we are seeking opinions and information and data and comparing, more information isn't really giving us clarity. It actually fragments the mind because we now have more things to consider. And when it comes to decision making, to making a big decision, it activates the part of the brain that is searching for risk. It activates the nervous system. The nervous system, if it's feeling like there's a little bit of danger, which usually as it's scanning for risk, it's overthinking, it's looking for things that could go wrong, right? It's easier to outsource than make our own decision, because we can just go with what is expected or what is normal, right? And it feels safer. So it's usually the first resort, because it feels safer to the nervous system of like, well, this just seems like the logical next step, so I'm going to do that. And we can avoid change because where we're at is safe. So this is like if you're staying in a relationship longer than you know is right. If you're staying in a job, regardless of hating it every day, if you're staying places without moving, if you're not making change in your life, is often because it feels safer to, right? It feels really challenging and threatening to do what is unfamiliar, and the brain is always going to choose the familiar path, like what it knows, even if what it knows is a toxic relationship where there's lots of arguments and little resolve, or a job where we're unappreciated and worked to exhaustion every day. What is familiar there is often more comforting to the brain than a unknown alternative, like leaving a job and working for yourself, or finding a new job, or leaving the relationship, having a period of being alone, and dating again, right? That feels unfamiliar and scary. So even though we don't like the place that we're in, it is really easy to avoid change than it is to change, because the body is screaming, let's just stay with what is familiar. Now, a lot of people might say that they don't know what they want, or they don't know which direction to go. That isn't entirely true. Of course you do know. However, if you have spent your whole life choosing based on what's going on around you, rather than consulting your intuition and your inner voice and your yeses and nos, then it's going to feel weak, that inner signal. So you might not hear it as loudly as someone who has practiced from choosing from this place, that the inner voice might scream, you have to leave, right? It's going to be a lot more subtle. But the thing is, if you're not training yourself to hear your intuition and to lead from within, then you're going to lose the ability to do that. And so that's a beautiful thing, because you can train it back up as well. Okay, so the way that we build self-trust and the way that we build more alignment in life is through self-leadership. It's through making choices based on what we want and taking action on that. And the action of doing that, and then the new result or circumstance, is what retrains the brain. Okay, so making a choice, and then you get confirmation that like, hey, that worked out. And then that starts to feel safer in the body. So we're reconditioning the body through small baby steps, through self-led action. That might be following your intuitive awareness once, resting without guilt once, saying no once. I remember the first time I said no, it felt so scary. And I did. The way that it was received was like, sure, fine. And it lessened a lot of that fear, because I got confirmation that it's not the end of the world if I say no. And so this is how you build trust in following your own lead rather than everyone else's lead. And we can look at why this is even important, why it is important to trust yourself. I think I have covered a lot of that. But in a world where there is so much going on, there is so much noise, there's so much information. We are in the information age where everyone that wants to can share their opinion online, so it's quite noisy. We're also in a time where there is AI creating videos, so we're not even sure what is real or what is fake, right? And so having a inner compass to then feel into like, is that actually true? Does that feel right for me? Do I want to believe that? Is so important, right? The ability to discern what you're going to believe and what you're going to do. Because if you believe everything that you see online, you may be pushed into fear to do things that you don't want to do. And so having that inner awareness and self-trust muscle activated and online, you get to then choose based on what feels right. Right, and I guess the difference here between the external authority, like giving your power away to others and letting them choose for you, versus your internal authority, is your external authority is going to sound like, tell me what's right. tell me the solution. Just tell me what to do. Whereas your inner authority is saying, what actually feels right? What do I think is the right way forward? Okay, and so there's a little bit of a shift that needs to happen to then start to operate from this place. But it's so important just to navigate the world that we're in, and also to create a life that feels aligned, because the more that you choose based on what you want, the more that things will fall into place. The more that you trust your intuition where it says, don't take this job, even though the paycheck is good and your mind says, hey, that's a good paycheck, but your heart says, I don't think I can do this. It's learning to trust that regardless of what your head is saying. Okay, and this is going to help you end up in a place where you're happier, where you're less resentful, where you have less regrets, where you feel more connected to your life because you actually chose, right? You chose regardless of fear or discomfort or unknowing, took the action, and then that confirmed to you that it was going to work out. And so you build the muscle through doing that. Now we can look at what it means to build this self-trust muscle, what it means to work with yourself rather than against yourself, just to make your life generally more pleasant. So one is looking at your capacity. This is a big one of what is it that you are able to take on? What is it that you have capacity for? And then choosing through that lens. So you're actually taking an assessment of, my schedule's pretty busy, I'm pretty booked out in terms of social, in terms of work, and knowing you're at full capacity means that you can then choose based on what your schedule already looks like, rather than giving away your yeses because someone just asked for help, right? So looking at your capacity, and when you get to full capacity, being able to communicate like, hey, I can't take this on now. Maybe later, maybe next week, ask me again. But right now, I can't do that. Okay, and so working with your capacity is a good way to start building this self-trust muscle, because you're looking within first. The other thing is your rhythm. As women, we go through a monthly cycle, which we have 4 stages of that. So there are stages in your cycle, like your ovulation, where you're going to feel more energetic, more wanting to do social activities, and that's a really good time to do those things. There's also the time during your bleed where you're going to feel more restful. There's more of a need for quiet time, for downtime. And so honoring your rhythm in your capacity, what you're available for, is going to help you a lot in deciding and choosing what is right for you. Okay, because no one can tell you that what you're capable of at the time of your bleed, because they may not even know that that's the time of the month. So it's up to you to decide what you are able to do or not during that time, right? You're going to have more energy some days than others, and that is perfectly fine. And it's about working with that, not against that. Another way that you can start to work with yourself, and this is when it comes to when there's a lot of head noise, when it gets really busy in your mind, is actually slowing down to find clarity. It can be easy to ramp up and to outsource, like we had said, like asking your friends, asking Google, getting more information, like putting more information or input in your brain to then find clarity. It's not going to work because the nervous system is overstimulated and isn't going to see as clearly, right? So you want to actually do the opposite of what feels productive, which is to slow down, which is to find maybe silence or a stillness, to then find a moment of clarity. Okay, this is going to help you build self-trust, because when those moments of silence, the more that you can hear your inner voice, your inner wisdom, and if you can hear it, then you can follow it. And the other one is boundaries, and we kind of touched on this a little bit, but being able to set boundaries to support yourself, to support your energy, to support what you want. Okay, if there's things that you don't want to do, it's communicating that with others. I don't want to do that. I don't have capacity for that. Hey, I haven't had enough sleep, so instead of going out tonight, I'm going to rest, right? And making choices that support you and your alignment, like what feels good, rather than feeling like you have to do what others want and expect of you. And so in summary, when you're learning to trust yourself, sometimes trust is asking for less input. It's asking for more rest. It might even be asking for you to process some emotions, right? To grieve a version of you that would have said yes. And all of this work is ultimately clearing the way for you to align yourself with more of you, more of your inner wisdom, your soul's light to come online, to align with more of who you are, rather than who you're trying to be or trying to present as, right? Who you have to, or felt that you have to be to survive. So a lot of this work is coming back within, drawing your power within, learning to work with you and with who you are, therefore finding more alignment in life. And being guided from within, from your inner compass, is a beautiful place, because things sort of just happen and fall into place a lot easier. It's a lot easier and less effortful. And when we're applying less effort, then we're typically less stressed, less exhausted, less tired, less burnt out, and we have more capacity and room to do the things that we enjoy. And life is really about following the joy and finding more time to do things that make you feel good. So it's just time to start to condition that. I hope that helps. If you found this helpful, then make sure you like, subscribe, and leave a comment. What was your main takeaway? What are you going to do moving forward to start to build more self-trust within yourself? I hope it helps, and have a lovely day.